Well, thank you very much, Yehuda Jean, for having me on today. We're going to cover a couple different things regarding life insurance. It's actually something I'm very passionate about. It's made a big difference in my career and my personal life. So I'm excited to kind of get into some of these things today. First off, just to give you guys a little bit of background about myself and who I am. I started my career back in 2002, working with Merrill Lynch. After that, I ended up transferring to another investment firm called A.G. Edwards for a couple years. When I was there, focused primarily on asset management. After that, went back to Merrill Lynch for another 3 or 4, still doing just asset management. And after that, ended up getting into a company called MetLife, which is where I started getting into life insurance and some of the planning-oriented types of things. Now, when MetLife was bought by MassMutual, I switched over to AXA Advisors, where I do a little bit of everything. So it's kind of neat to have that perspective where I'm not just having one product that we talk about, but we can really offer whatever's best for that client's situation. Kind of gives us a non-biased opinion in the business, which is rare to come by. So at this point, I'm more of a comprehensive, financial planner rather than a product specialist. I don't just handle things like life insurance, but it's an important piece to any financial plan. So today we can talk about some of the concerns, misconceptions, and thoughts regarding life insurance, some of the things I come across. We'll also get into a couple case studies, some examples that I've seen in my career on things that people do that make sense, don't make sense, or something in between. So as far as some of the different issues and concerns when it comes to life insurance, one of the primary objectives for life insurance is typically to cover all those uncertainties. I call it the ifs in life. What if somebody passes away? What if somebody's no longer able to perform their occupation? What kind of impact could that have on the family? And what are we really using the insurance for? Another common question that I feel like most people don't have the answer to would be, how much life insurance should I even own? Is there a right amount for me? One of the other things we come across time and time again is, can I use life insurance as an investment? We'll talk about what some firms would say and what I would say myself after several years of experience on both sides of the fence. Also, commonly, life insurance can be used to leave a legacy, and sometimes it can be used as an investment, able to provide flexible income as well as death benefits. So we'll address all those things today. So first off, this first case study is very close to my heart, right? It's actually my father that we're talking about here. So my father was a successful business owner, did mid to high 6 figures, and always had a pretty good life, right? Now, when I was early on in my career, like I said before, I really focused on investments. So I even had some misconceptions of my own. I thought that life insurance was really there for that 2% chance that you might pass away early. So why would you plan for that when there's a 98% chance that you don't, right? So my own father, we handled all of his investments. We didn't really have any life insurance on him though, right? Because I figured, hey, there's a 98% chance he's around for a long time, 2% chance that he's not going to be around. So why would we plan for that 2% chance? Nowadays, I would say the most important thing is to think about it like you're building a house, right? Life insurance can really be the foundation to your financial future. So you want to make sure that if anything goes wrong, you're going to be covered, right? Your family's not left trying to figure out what they have to sell or what they have to do to make ends meet, or for that matter, what lifestyle changes they even have to make to be able to continue on. So again, my father making good money, had a retirement house down in Hilton Head, South Carolina, had a very nice house up here in New Jersey, always had good income, paid for my sister's college, 8 years at Cornell to be a vet, paid for my college at Fairfield University. So after spending $600,000 on college, still was able to put away $1.5 million for retirement. Now, unfortunately, he was a smoker. So 4 packs a day, pretty heavy smoker. He actually ended up passing away at 56 years old from lung cancer. Not something any of us saw coming. So that becomes the big point. Somebody who's doing very well for themselves might not need life insurance from a death benefit standpoint, or at least didn't feel that he did, right? He didn't have any liabilities he wanted to cover. He didn't have any legacy he needed to leave behind. He had a great business. However, it was his business and he was the only one running it. So when he did pass away, believe it or not, 6 months later, the business went completely under. There was actually still a $500,000 liability on the business's books that we didn't know about. And in addition to that, again, the only retirement assets that were saved up were about $1.5 million of investable money. So if you use a general financial planning rule, you can take about 4% from a portfolio and keep doing that for life. He would have been able to generate someplace in the ballpark of $60,000 from that $1.5 million. Now, my mother at that point was 58. So somebody living in a very nice house, very nice vacation home or retirement home, 60 grand really is not that much. So unfortunately, the first thing she had to do was sell the vacation home, the home that her and my father planned to retire in. After that, she had to spend $500,000 to cover the business's liabilities. She was left with $1 million, and the property tax alone, good old New Jersey, was $36,000 a year. So she would have had about $4,000 plus her Social Security to cover all of her expenses, which obviously did not work. So I kind of take that one to heart because due to my own lack of foresight, due to my own lack of planning, my own family, had to sell the vacation house, and now my mother lives with me and my wife. All of this could have been avoided, and most people don't even realize term insurance would have been pretty cheap. For my father, it would have been a couple $100 a month to make sure that if something happened to him, my mother could have continued living the life that she wanted to live, the life that they had planned for. Because nothing was in place, everything got turned upside down. And now she lives with me. I take care of my grandparents as well. All kinds of decisions that we really shouldn't have had to make if we had the proper protection in place. So that's an important one to consider. A lot of folks think that they're doing very well, don't see that need for the life insurance, but I would ask you to consider this. If something happened to you tomorrow, is there enough left behind for your loved ones to take care of themselves? Or while they're thinking about the loss they just took, would they have to then make financial decisions on top of that? Because that can be one of the most crippling situations that people are faced with. And the nice thing is life insurance can really solve that problem quite easily. So the second one I wanted to talk about was another couple that I've done some work with. They did have 2 children. They were in their early 30s. And I met with the husband and wife. They came in, we took a look at their overall situation. And at this point, I was over at MetLife. So life insurance was certainly something we had been talking about. I had just been through that experience with my father and his situation, dealing with the rest of my family. Wanted to make sure that I was protecting people from that type of situation. So we took a look at theirs, tried to figure out, A, how much was the right amount of insurance, right? So we went through our calculations to determine what the right amount was for them, explained to them how we came up with those numbers, and even had them come up with those numbers on their own, just to make sure we weren't upselling them, to some ridiculous amount. Now, it turned out for them that the wife had just lost her job due to health reasons. So for her, she was not able to keep working because of a disability. She actually was diagnosed with cancer, and she was out for several months. Now, the husband was the only breadwinner at this point, so it was important that he have some insurance on himself. Not only did he not have enough coverage, but he also didn't have a will or any of the basics. So we took a look at his overall situation, recommended a particular amount of insurance, and for him, he was actually amazed how cheap the term insurance was. For $100 a month, we were able to get him almost $2 million of term insurance. Now, again, this was because he's younger and in good shape, but for the wife, we actually weren't able to get any coverage because she already had an illness. So for her, since she had just left her company, we looked at converting the group insurance. Now, the group insurance was convertible to a whole life policy. Whole life is much more expensive than term, and there can be several other benefits if it's done properly. That's one of the other biggest issues we see in the business. A lot of people use permanent insurance to save for all types of additional goals. Maybe they want to build a cash value to save for college. That way they can pay for their children's college with the life insurance policy. Maybe they want to save for their children's wedding or that first home purchase. Maybe they want to save to supplement their retirement income. But one of the biggest issues we see with that is people don't review those policies on a regular basis. If permanent insurance is not reviewed on a regular basis, all kinds of issues can take place, and it usually leads to the same disaster. People end up lapsing the insurance, they can't afford to get it reinstated, and they get hit with all kinds of taxes. Again, this is something that's easily avoidable if you make sure you review it on a regular basis. But that said, we ended up converting some term insurance that she had through her old employer into permanent insurance. She was looking to build up cash value for retirement, so her focus was not death benefit. Her focus was actually growing the cash inside the policy. Now for her, unfortunately, the cancer came back. So I ended up getting a call from her husband, probably, I would say about 6 months after I had initially met them, and the cancer came back and she had passed away. Well, even though the policy was designed to really grow the cash value and wasn't designed for death benefit, there was still a $400,000 death benefit to the policy. And again, I was early on in my career, so even though I had positioned it as more of an investment, realistically, that $400,000 made more of a difference to the husband than I could have ever imagined. Right? I ended up meeting him to deliver the check in person, and I'll never forget him getting off the elevator crying, coming up to me, giving me a big hug, and thanking me for what I did for them. And I said, well, totally appreciate that, but what did you really find valuable about what we did here? And he said to me, Mike, because of you, I'm able to put away money for my son's college. Because of you, I'm able to hire a nanny to be able to stay home and take care of my son, and I don't have to quit my job. If you didn't have this insurance for my wife, I would have had to quit my job. I'd probably have lost the house by now, and I'd certainly have a ton of decisions to make that I really don't want to make. So I really appreciate the fact that you sat down with me, explained everything the way you did, and made sure that we had the right amount of insurance. Because without you, we'd be in a whole different situation. So that kind of really hit home. Even though we had designed it as an investment to be able to grow tax-free and come out tax-free, it ended up still providing a death benefit that was significant to the family. So I always say sometimes life insurance can have multiple uses. It might not be what you were hoping to accomplish with it, but it's always good to have regardless of the situation, right? So the third case I wanted to talk about today was actually a case where I had a client that was about to retire. Their children were actually grown, no longer financially dependent on them, but he was focused on saving for retirement, and he told me that he was all set. Now, all set is something I've come to hear quite often in my career. All set typically means something along the lines of, I have an insurance guy, I have an investment guy, I have a financial planner, and they work with my CPA and my attorney to make sure that I'm all set. So I don't really know what you'd be able to do for me, Mr. Riley. Now, again, I've heard this many, many times in my career, and I would say most of the time, we're still able to do something to benefit them. Now, why is that, right? They have a full team of professionals, not just one. They've been working with them for 5, 10, 20, 30 years. So how are we able to go in there and really add value to the whole situation? Well, for this individual, he actually had a life insurance guy that he was working with who had sold him a couple of policies, we'll say. He also had an attorney that he was working with who was handling all of his business stuff, setting up LLCs, also had done his will, power of attorney, and healthcare directives. And he had the accountant that he was using for the last several years for his personal taxes as well as the business taxes. So with this individual, he had mentioned to me that he had an estate issue. He was over $11 million, and his attorney told him to speak with an insurance professional to be able to set up some insurance for estate planning purposes. So he met with the attorney, they put together a trust. After the trust was set up, he met with the life insurance guy. And the life insurance guy actually ended up selling him term insurance, which typically would not be used to fund a trust, but he didn't know that. So he took out these term insurance policies. Once the policies were active, went back to the the attorney, told him what he had done, and the attorney said, okay, great, now make sure your accountant's aware of the situation. So he spoke to the accountant. Accountant said, that sounds accurate to me. You have a trust, you have the insurance, it should all be held outside your estate. Everything's perfect. So I asked him for copies of all these statements, and what ended up happening was very different than what he had tried to explain. When it comes to the trust was set up the right way. The problem was actually with the insurance. So not only was the insurance term insurance, which to fund a trust we would normally use permanent insurance, but that insurance was owned by him individually, not by the trust. When you do that, the insurance actually becomes part of your estate. So even though the death benefit is not taxable, the face amount of the insurance is includable in your estate. So long story short, he actually made the situation worse to the tune of a couple $1,000,000 by adding the policies to his individual name, when this all could have been taken care of by simply having the trust own the policies and the trust be the beneficiary. Now, how does something like this happen? Well, again, you have all the right professionals, but what we come to find time and time again is they may not be talking to each other on a regular basis, or at all for that matter. So it was simple miscommunication, right? He had the right idea, but it was executed the wrong way. So that's another example I love to discuss, because somebody that has everything all set, has $9 or $10 million at a couple of investment firms, life insurance, an accountant, an attorney, the whole team that you would particularly think would be the right team, still doesn't mean that everything's set up the right way, especially when those people aren't talking to each other. So again, today, hope we were able to kind of convey some of the power of life insurance, what it really can do for you. Term insurance is probably the best way to protect yourself from that if in life. What if you passed away too soon, right? Certainly a great way to protect your spouse, your children, anyone that you love or care about. Because without that, they're going to be faced with some very difficult decisions. So I always say, for those couple dollars a month, would you rather have your wife and family protected, or would you rather have to go set up a fundraiser at your local synagogue or church and try to see if you can get all your followers to contribute to your situation, help pay for your kids' college? I've seen it all before. It's certainly a mess that I wouldn't want to be involved in, especially when you take a look at the cost of term insurance. Term insurance could also be used to cover your liabilities, right? Be it business liabilities that you have on the books. Maybe you purchased a business from somebody else and you owe them money to pay them back over a certain amount of time. You could use that term insurance as a buy-sell. You can cover the mortgage, a lot of different liabilities, even college if it's not fully funded. All of those things can be done with term insurance. You can also make sure that if something happens to you, your income continues. So again, in that second example, or even the first example, if retirement's not fully funded, if college is not fully funded, if the mortgage is not paid for, you want to make sure that you have enough term insurance where your spouse could continue living the lifestyle that you want them to live. I'm not saying that you need to give your spouse $5 million so they can go run around and do something else, but you want to make sure that they're at least able to continue the lifestyle that you set out for them, right? For permanent insurance can be a great way to leave a legacy to those that you care about. So if something happens to you, maybe there's a check every year that your great-great-great-grandchildren would get with your name on it. I know my father's name. I know my grandfather's name. I don't know my great-great-grandfather's name or my great-great-great-grandfather's name. But by having a trust or by having some permanent insurance, it's one of the ways you can actually fund that gift for the rest of your family's life, not just your life, and really leave something behind. And the other thing for permanent insurance is it can be used as tax-free growth and tax-free income. But most importantly, make sure that you review it on a regular basis. because when it's not reviewed on a regular basis, there's all kinds of negative impacts that can happen to change what that policy would look like, possibly cancel out altogether, or cancel out and hit you with a big tax bill at the end of the day. So make sure that you review your policy on a regular basis with your professional. Other than that, thanks again for having me today, Gene Yehuda. Appreciate the time here, and always feel free if you have any questions moving forward. Thank you.